Evan Rourke had always been good at reading people. Investors, competitors, clients who smiled too easily. But tonight, in the amber glow of the rooftop restaurant, he wasn't reading anyone. He was simply allowing himself to be hopeful, and that was rare for him. Across the intimate candlelit table sat Celeste Verdun, beautiful, polished, poised, the woman he'd been seeing for nearly 3 months. She wore a soft silk dress that shimmered whenever she leaned into the light. And tonight she looked like she belonged in some old-fashioned romance film. "This place is beautiful," she said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "You have excellent taste." "You deserve something beautiful," Evan said softly. She smiled, slow and practiced, but still lovely. Their server had dimmed the table's lantern, leaving only warm light spilling over their plates. A string quartet played quietly near the terrace. The air was cool, scented with vanilla candles and the faintest trace of sea salt drifting up from the harbor below. Everything was perfect, almost too perfect. Evan couldn't explain why he felt a faint tug in his chest, something he ignored, something he brushed off, something he swallowed. It was just nerves, he told himself. He was finally letting someone into his life again. That alone made him feel unstable. A sommelier approached their table, tall, composed, carrying a deep bottle of Bordeaux. But something about him made Evan's senses sharpen. His posture was elegant, deliberate, but his jaw was tight, and his eyes flicked to Evan with something more than professional interest. "Good evening," the sommelier said, voice low and controlled. "Would you care to try a wine reserved for tonight's distinguished guests?" Celeste smiled politely. "That sounds wonderful." But Evan noticed the sommelier's focus was entirely on him. Almost warning, almost urgent. The sommelier uncorked the bottle with slow precision, pouring only a sip into Evan's glass. "Please," he said, "taste it." Evan lifted the glass, but the sommelier shifted closer, leaning in under the guise of adjusting the candle. He slid something into Evan's free hand, a small rectangle, thin, paper, a photo. Evan froze. The sommelier's voice stayed smooth, gentle, perfectly normal. But his words were meant only for Evan. "Look at it under the table," he whispered. Evan's pulse jumped. Then the sommelier straightened, giving a courteous nod, and walked away as if nothing had happened. Celeste lifted her wineglass to her lips. "He seems new, a bit intense." Evan murmured, keeping his hand hidden beneath the tablecloth. He turned the photo with his fingertips, and what he saw made his breath stop. It was Celeste, her back to a hotel room window, her dress slipping off one shoulder, her hand tangled in the shirt of a man Evan had never seen before. Their faces close, too close, intimately close. The air knocked out of Evan's chest, but he didn't look up. Not yet. His heartbeat pounded against the fabric of his suit jacket. Celeste took another slow sip of wine, completely relaxed, completely unaware. He could feel the heat of the truth rising from the photo like static electricity. He forced himself to breathe, steady, controlled, measured. He had mastered boardrooms, markets, and empires. He could master this moment. He slipped the photo deeper under the table, flattening it against his thigh. His mind raced. Why would a sommelier have this? Why give it to him? Why right now? Celeste placed a hand on the table, her manicured nails catching the candlelight. "I'm really glad you chose tonight for this," she said, voice soft, almost coaxing. "It feels special." Evan lifted his eyes to her, a question burning behind them. Why? He asked quietly. She smiled, warm, seductive, perfect. Because it feels like you're finally opening up to me, like you trust me. Trust. Evan felt the word like a shard of glass. The sommelier reappeared, suddenly refilling Celeste's wine with a practiced grace, but his shoulder brushed Evan's arm briefly. It looked accidental. It wasn't. A second tiny paper slipped into Evan's palm. The sommelier didn't look at him. He didn't break character. He simply bowed and left the table once more. Evan waited until Celeste looked out toward the view. Then he opened the second paper under the table. It wasn't a photo this time. It was a handwritten message. She isn't who you think she is. Check the timestamp on the photo. She was with him 30 minutes ago. 30 minutes ago, before she arrived, before the lipstick touch-ups, before her soft compliment at the table. Evan felt a slow, burning tightness coil in his chest. Evan? Celeste asked, leaning in, eyes bright. You okay? He looked at her across the table, candlelight cutting soft curves along her cheekbones. She was beautiful, radiant, confident, too confident. Something inside him shifted, subtle but seismic. Yeah, he said quietly. I'm okay. But he wasn't. He wasn't even close. Because he finally understood something. Tonight wasn't romantic. It was a performance. And someone in this restaurant, someone who'd risked their job to warn him, had just shattered the script. Evan curled the papers tightly in his hand beneath the tablecloth. The truth was coming, whether she was ready or not. Evan kept his composure so perfectly that anyone watching would have thought he was simply admiring the skyline. But inside, everything in him had gone sharp, focused, quiet, in the most dangerous way. Celeste reached across the table, letting her fingers brush the back of his hand. You're awfully quiet, she said, her tone dipped in sweetness. Is something on your mind? Evan forced a faint smile. Just thinking. What about? He let the moment stretch soft tension simmering. A thin thread pulled tighter and tighter. Truth, he said. Celeste blinked. Truth? He swirled the wine in his glass. How people hide it, how it always finds its way out. Celeste laughed lightly, as if he'd said something charming. You're in a poetic mood tonight. Before he could answer, the sommelier returned silent, steady, eyes fixed on the table as he refilled the candle's oil reservoir. A normal action. But then, with a movement so subtle it felt like sleight of hand, he set a new napkin by Evan's plate. A folded napkin. Evan didn't touch it, not yet. Thank you, he said calmly. The sommelier gave the slightest nod, barely noticeable, and walked away. Evan lifted the napkin under the table, eyes never leaving Celeste's face. Inside was a hotel keycard, and written on the back, Room 804, her coat is still there. His pulse thudded, not with jealousy, no, with clarity. He slipped the keycard into his jacket pocket, the cool plastic grounding him. Celeste leaned forward, her voice dropping into something softer, a little sultry. I was thinking, after dinner, maybe we could go back to your place. I have something special planned. Her gaze was intent, almost rehearsed. Special? Evan echoed. She nodded, brushing her fingertips along the stem of her wineglass. Very. Evan held her eyes for a long, deliberate moment. The intimacy between them felt different now, heated, but not with desire. Heated with truth pressing against the edges of the night. Celeste, he said quietly, where were you before you came here? She blinked, startled by the question. What do you mean? Exactly what I asked, he said, voice velvet smooth and controlled. "Where were you?" She let out a breathy laugh, trying to wave it off. "Evan, you're being weird. I was getting ready. Why?" He didn't react. "You're sure?" "Yes," she said too quickly. He leaned back, studying her, not with anger, with a slow, unraveling understanding that made her shift in her seat. "Because," he said softly, "someone here seems to believe otherwise." Her jaw tensed only for a flicker, but enough. "Who?" she demanded. Evan shook his head. "Not important." The string quartet shifted into a slower song. The night breeze brushed the side of his face, and when Evan finally exhaled, he felt every doubt settle into a single unavoidable truth. "You know," he murmured, setting down his glass. "I came here tonight hoping this was going somewhere real." Celeste frowned. "It is." "No," he corrected gently. "It's not." Her eyes narrowed. "Evan, what are you—" "You were in room 804, he said quietly. "Less than an hour ago." Her face drained of color. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't accuse. He didn't make a scene. He simply looked at her with the kind of calm that only comes from a man who finally sees everything clearly. Celeste opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "You don't understand." "No," he said, standing slowly, deliberately. "I understand perfectly." He placed a $100 bill on the table, not for her, for the sommelier. Then he looked toward the corner of the restaurant. The sommelier was watching, not intrusively, just making sure he was okay. Evan gave him a faint nod, a quiet thank you. Celeste's voice cracked. "Evan, wait!" He leaned in close, not to comfort her, not to touch her, but to speak a final truth in a low, steady tone. "You didn't lose me tonight," he whispered. "You never had me." And with that, he straightened, buttoned his jacket, and walked calm, collected out of the restaurant. Behind him, Celeste's breath caught, but she didn't follow. She couldn't. Evan stepped into the night air, exhaling deeply. The truth hadn't hurt him. It had freed him.